Anjali Venkateshwar, and it is my pleasure to introduce Kristin Sapp, who will be joining me today. Kristin is the Senior Program Director, Genetically Modified Animal Program at Biomere site in Worcester, Massachusetts. Kristin received her bachelor's degree from the University of Massachusetts and her master's degree from the University of Maryland Global Campus. She has over 30 years experience in the biopharma and CRO sectors, and that includes 18 years of experience with animal models. So, Joine Biomere is a preclinical CRO with locations in Worcester, Mass, Richmond, California, and multiple sites in China. The company's portfolio includes comprehensive discovery, ADME, and GLP toxicology services. You can learn more about Biomere's service offering at www.biomere.com. So let's get into today's topic on colony management solutions at Biomere. So welcome, Kristin. And let's start with a short overview on Biomere's vivarium facility and the team. I know you have an amazing team, so I'd just love to learn more about, your facility and the amazing team that you manage.
Nice to be here. Like you said, we're based in Worcester, Massachusetts, and my team is a team of 14, and we are in charge of all the breeding colonies for all of our clients. And we have two basically facilities, I'll call it, at Biomere. One would be a complete shower and clean barrier, and another one is specific pathogen free.
Okay. And so when you say complete shower and barrier, is that for immunodeficient animals or
No,
what kind of animals, what kind of animals do you house in that facility?
It's just rodents, and they're just we all shower in basically to protect the health status of all the animals. So if you think we would be dirty to them, so we're trying to protect them. So everybody takes an actual physical shower, which I know sounds weird, but we do, and we dress in facility clothes, and we're gowned with all our PPE, and we just everything is just done very, very clean. No animals are opened under anything but, laminar flow hoods. So it's just all about protecting those animals, whether they are immunocompromised or not.
And that's really important, right? Because I think it doesn't take much for something to go wrong in a vivarium. So the fact that you guys have such strong and stringent standards, I think gives a lot of comfort to clients who have, the animals there for whom, you're breeding, you're breeding populations and things like that. So, it seems like you guys have a really well-established, facility, and 14 is a team of 14 people is very, very impressive. So let's talk a little bit. I know, like there's a lot of, you guys have been doing a lot of promotion around some of the real technical capabilities, and I think they sound really impressive. So maybe we can start a little bit around, some of the reproductive assistance parts, because again, these are some things that, people may not be fully aware of or the importance of it. So let's maybe start with, tell me a little bit about, the kind of reproductive assistance capabilities at Biomere.
Sure. So a lot of our strains will come from commercial vendors, and they'll be what we could just talk about, very clean. But then on the other hand, there's a lot of our clients that want to get some animals from academia who don't have showering facilities like that. So the animals would be considered dirty, or they would have some pathogens. And in order to clean that all up so that it can go into one of our, our housing areas, we have to do embryology essentially. So there is offerings for people to have IVF done or just traditional embryo transfer surgery. And essentially, my team and I, we collect oocytes or embryos. We clean them up through some media steps, and then we surgically implant them into pseudopregnant females that are clean inside our breeding barrier, and then they give birth 3 weeks later to clean pups, and our clients can start their studies on a fresh slate, essentially.
And those pups are essentially, are they the F-Zeros?
Yeah, you would call it that. Yeah, it's like kind of restarting a colony a little bit. But it would be F0 for all intents and purposes for when they enter our facility.
Got it. That makes sense. And so I'm just going to be a little cheeky and ask, I know you have a vast amount of experience in this space. So Do you recall any instances where, you were working with a particularly difficult to breed strain where, it was a very tricky or challenging, embryology protocol that you had to employ?
Yes, I've actually had some of them recently where, we get shipped some animals and, they'll ship us very small, like two. And, you have to try to
Mm.
come up with some really creative solutions because you don't want to, have to use them for IVF and then not have the animals anymore. So you have to do some breeding. And we've had some instances where, not knowing in our hands or how these animals breed, but some of them are not breeding. So then they would have originally come in for just, classic embryo transfer. And it's then stepping back and saying, like, what can we do and how fast we can go to get the animal model for our client. And what can we do, like thinking outside of the box to do it. So we had scenarios where we're breeding in isolation, and then we're also peeling off some animals and doing some IVF. And also we're doing some classic embryo transfer at the same time so we try everything that we can to get our the model in and ready for our clients, and we work with them as their timelines. And we also have stepped back a little bit and said, okay, we know this is not ideal and that the timeline has been made longer because the animals reproductively are not behaving how you want them to. So let's do these small pilot studies for you while they're in isolation, and we'll do them inside the isolators, which is a very difficult type of
Yeah.
atmosphere to work in. But my team is trained to work in those, so they can do a whole bunch of different manipulations in there. So
Just listening to you, that's just amazing because as we know, biology rarely behaves. And
exactly.
you go in there with a game plan thinking, oh, it's going to be like this, and it's going to take X amount of time, and then things happen. So it's really, I think, heartening to hear that it seems like you and your team are prepared for different eventualities and you're trained to say, okay, well, what's plan B, what's plan C, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
So I think that's absolutely amazing. I was curious about one question, like you mentioned, of course, the extreme care and the stringent protocols for, shower and PPE and things like that. Can you tell me a little bit about how, as you have these colonies going off for some time, what kind of testing do you do to make sure that, so for example, if they're specific pathogen free, what's the typical cadence of testing or, how do you do the testing? I'm very curious about that.
So we're actually responsible, my group, for all of the health monitoring or surveillance of all the rodents in the entire facility. So all of Biomere's, all of any building that they're in, and as long as if there's rodents there that are there longer than 3 months, then my team will come in and do the sampling. So we've kind of moved to a system that's media based. So we have some media that we're mixing their dirty bedding with per colony. But we also do some direct samples where we're taking fecal oral swabs and fur swabs, and we're sending those in. It kind of depends on what the project is, how big it is, and where it's sitting. But for the most part, it's pretty much every cage in there is getting tested over a 3 month span. And we send out testing based on our pathogen exclusion list for each area every 3 months, so every quarter. And then we also, when we bring in animals from isolation, there's a lot of times where we're getting animals from vendors and they do this subset of testing. And when that happens, it doesn't comply with our pathogen exclusion list. So I work with the investigator to come up and get them, and our veterinarians, to get them in the door in isolation, get them tested when they come here, and then they'll get released if they pass all the tests, essentially. If they don't get passed, then the option becomes for the investigator that's brought the animal model in. Do you want to go forward with this model? And if you do, then it comes to my team, and then I do a rederivation for it through embryo transfer and all the rest of it. So I kind of have my hand in, our team has our hand in a lot of different of the rodent programs at Biomere, because we usually get called upon for one thing, whether it be health monitoring or then to remedy a colony or a study cohort that's not passing the pathogen exclusion list tests.
And I think that, this is so important, right? Because only when you have healthy animals and animals that meet the specifications can you use them in studies and can you actually get actionable, usable data out of them. And I think, sometimes it's easy to forget because everything goes smoothly and you're like, oh yeah, my animals are fine, I'm going to get the study. But it's really important to have a solid game plan when and if things can go wrong, because that can upend a program or a study. So speaking of studies, one of the things that is really interesting about Biomere is it's like a one-stop shop. So, you for in vivo studies, right? I mean, I think that's one of the core sweet spot competency kind of things for Biomere, where, pharma biotech clients can outsource not just the animal management, but also, the pharmacology, ADME, tox programs. So, I mean, for the clients who take advantage of this one-stop, are there any advantages? I mean, like why would somebody want to consider outsourcing both aspects to Biomere?
So as far as from a colony management standpoint, when you bring a line in and we're breeding it for you, you will get priority scheduling essentially. So, as you know, if I could control reproduction, I would never have to work. And so when someone's building a cohort and they want to have, let's say 15 homozygous females, and, we only get, 14, and then we need another one, we can kind of roll them in, study, a rolling admissions type thing. But also, I don't know when they're going to be born. And, right now we're gearing up to do a 2-week-old neonate study in my team. And, like I said, we can set up matings and we can even do time matings. But if it has to be day 12 that we're starting, then it has to be day 12. So we have to be flexible, right? So, therefore, they're not waiting, to have a cohort born that's day 12 exactly on this date. We will stagger, we will work with our clients because it's important to us, obviously, to use the animals from a 3R perspective, right? But also for our clients to, get the data that they need when they need it, not to delay, and to use the animals efficiently, and to, get it all done so we can start the next one essentially. And then it's easy too, from my team perspective, from the other side of it, is that because my team breeds the animals and they know how the animal model behaves, we also do the studies in them, and we do a lot of neonate studies because it's easier there for the inside of our vivarium, because we don't want to ship the dams out with let's say just for the neonate study, because then at that point they can't come back into the barrier, right?
Right.
Because they've been out. So, we try to do things inside of the breeding barrier that we can, so we can save the dams to use them again for another litter, again, and using the 3Rs. And also we're already in there, we know the model, and we just do the study there. So it's one shop stop, like you said. Yep. So we get the animals in, and then we do your study, and then we keep on rolling essentially.
And maybe, I don't know if this is important, but one thing that always struck my curiosity is, people ship animals, right? I mean, that's been going on forever. But in your, based on your experience, when animals get shipped, especially as you mentioned, dams with neonates, apart from the barrier, would these animals experience stress, and could that impact the studies? Because, they're basically being shipped for all intents
Yeah.
and purposes.
I mean, always, right? So we always build in, acclimation periods, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that becomes very difficult to do that when you're doing, a neonate study, if you had to ship outside of Biomere, because now you have to consider, maybe your protocol says 72 hours minimum, or maybe it's 5 days, right? And so if you're
Right.
trying to do a study with something that young and you're shipping out, the animals will be stressed. And it's not to say that you can't do it, because, you can,
Right.
we obviously do ship animals out to our clients as well. And even internationally. So, it's not to say that you can't, it's just that it's better if they stay in their home environment essentially, right? Because there's no variation to that. So there's consistency in their care, there's consistency in their housing. So you would then say that would lend to, there would be consistency in your data, right?
Completely. And when there is this option to do it all in one place, you're saving time, you're likely saving costs, and you're, adhering to the 3Rs principles. it seems like it makes sense to do it if you can do it, because yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. And I do, and priority scheduling is something that I do believe is pretty near and dear to a lot of biopharma clients, because in drug programs there's always the pressure to go, move fast, get data, get to IND as fast as you can. And I think something like priority scheduling can really be a big help. I mean, because especially, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think some of the safety studies can take a while. Well, some of these
Yeah.
studies can take time. You're waiting for long-term tox effects or things like that. So getting the animals, and I do believe that, especially with the trends of outsourcing becoming more and more, there's the line. People have to wait in lines. So you don't want to wait in line if you don't have to.
No, that's the good thing about having a colony with us is that you essentially don't
Yeah.
have to wait in line. So, I mean, besides there's the small animal team that does, your regular, animals import in, do your studies. There's my team that also does these studies. And between the two teams, right, we get it done. And then because we pull on both areas of expertise. So, when there's something that one of my team, a new thing that my team hasn't done before, but let's say the other team has it, well, they'll come in and they'll do that procedure for us. So it's a
Yeah.
very, like I said, it's flexible. You get things done right away. We collaborate and we get what the client wants as soon as possible. But one thing I will say is that, even though I feel it's best, and as you probably do, to keep it all in one place. I just do want to point out too that we do on the regular ship animals out, domestically and
Yeah.
internationally. We have a lot of clients that are in this hub here for the Boston, Cambridge area. We have a courier that leaves and works Monday through Friday and brings animals to investigators, brings, our the tissue collections and everything that we have. So all that stuff gets done and gets shipped to you the same day. And so
Yeah.
in addition to having priority
Oh,
scheduling, you also get your stuff same day. So I think that that's
right.
a big draw for our program. I think that sets us above the rest, I would say.
I think so. And that idea, I see in the back of your wall the concept of flexibility, and that's huge, right? And that's a perfect segue into something, one of the challenges. I mean, people who've run, in vivo, in vitro, basically end-to-end drug discovery. I challenge anybody to show me a study design that is the same at the end as it was in the
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody can, prove me wrong, but I just feel like more often than not, study designs are changing, and based on the data, right? You get a certain data set and you're like, oh, okay, it may be a bit unexpected. You've got to tweak study designs, you've got to change stuff up. So how does your group manage these changes, in a very efficient way?
Well, they're very nimble, I should say. I think it comes down to their attitude. Their attitude is that, I mean, they're all animal lovers too at the same time. They want to see the things that they're breeding and caring for. They want to see them used for the greater good. And so they understand that things change and, that's fine with us. They just take everything in stride. I mean, if you think about a breeding colony in general, it's pretty much like managed chaos, I think, a lot of times, right? Because you
I
don't
love
know
it.
what you're going to get. You don't know what you're going
Yeah.
to get. And so because you don't want to know what you're going to get, you prepare for all the different things. So I think that really sets my team apart, because they're ready to do whatever is asked of them because they do that every day. So every day when they walk in, I mean, I do this too. And I'm in the vivarium probably at least 3 times a week. So um, I walk in and I have this, I think I'm going to do A, B, C, and D. And I usually don't get anything done but maybe D. Do you know what I mean? Because
Right.
I'm
Right.
in there and we're, it's constantly talking, it's constantly collaborating. We're constantly, talking the day before a study starts, talking the morning the study starts. I'm usually in there when a study starts to just make sure that everybody's good, everything's going well. So, yeah, it's an easy thing for us to be flexible because we want to be flexible for our clients.
Yeah.
And I know that's probably cliche and people think, oh, are you really? No, I really am. We really are. We really care about, my team really cares about what they do.
And it's true, right? It's something that people aspire to, and it's like a nice buzzword. But I think it's good. What I know is that your team practices what they what they preach, what they say, and that's really really important, right? Because if you think of things like colony management, managing a breeding population, this is a long term commitment. We're not talking a few days or a few weeks. I mean, this could probably be months or maybe I don't know, even stretch into years for in some cases. And there's so much going on, right? As you mentioned, strain, derivation, generation, breeding, genotype, and just keeping these animals, healthy, getting breeding enough for, to meet the study requirements and things like that. So one question is, I love the fact that your team is so flexible and nimble, but tell me a little bit more, how do the biopharma clients get information on what's happening with their animals? And the reason, I say that is because in some cases, personally come across instances where the animal model is so precious to a client. It's like their baby. They're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I need this data. This is going to be that money data that I need for my, IND or whatever, milestone it is. And so they are essentially putting a huge amount of trust in giving, outsourcing their colony management. So they want to know what's going on, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So how is your team structured to, to interacting with the clients, not without kind of doing the Goldilocks approach, not overdoing the information updates, but not underdoing, somewhere in the middle.
Right. I mean, I guess I'll start off by saying that, I modeled this team when I came here in 2019 myself, and I built it from the ground up, right? So I was a client of Biomere
Oh, okay.
before I became an actual employee of it. So, I saw what I would, and I used to make transgenic models. That was my job. I used to run a transgenic course. So, I knew what I wanted as a client, so I set it up that way. So, every client when they first start, they always start with me, right? So I'm there talking to them. I ask them what they want, and we build all of their colony statements of work off of what they think that they're going to do. And, that's a flexible thing too. The way our colony statements of work, they're very flexible. They're not a cookie cutter. It's kind of based on what you're doing at the time is how it's structured. So I wanted consistency, right? So for consistency to clients, how it's structured is I have project coordinators that are their
Mhm.
first line of contact, right? So after they're done with me setting up the statement of work, then I introduce them to their project coordinator, and then the project coordinator is their first, line. They contact them for everything. They're their lifeline essentially to their colony. And for that, I'm still usually on all of the emails, just in the background, not as like a policing anything, but it's more so because I want to know what's going on. Because like I said, I go in there 3 times a week and I hear the stuff that, that's been said, or, the things that everybody's doing. And I don't want to walk in and say, what are we talking about here? So I always know what's going on. And
And you're a
so,
good backup too, right? In case somebody you
yeah,
need, it's always
yeah,
good to have backup.
yes, exactly. I mean, I'm still sometimes going in there and actually breeding and weaning cages. So because
Oh,
I'm just
nice.
in there, yeah.
Keeps you on your
Um,
toes.
yeah, yeah. So they go and they start breeding the animals, and then at some point they send you inventories, and everything, like I said, is how the client wants it. So if the client wants us to manage the entire thing and they don't want to know anything because they're
Right.
not, rodent people, we say fine, right? And so each client has not, it's not one client per project coordinator, but a client will have a project coordinator, and they're not talking to any other project coordinator for any other of their if they have multiple colonies, right? So it's the same person that you're talking to for
Nice.
every single colony that you have. And then underneath the project coordinator is usually 1 or 2 techs, depending on how many colonies you actually have. And it's the same 1 or 2 techs every time. When we don't do a rotation schedule, because that doesn't make a lot of sense for something where you have phenotypes that you're trying to closely watch, right? So every day I have team there every day. So the project coordinator and the techs are looking in those cages every single day. And so whatever the client wants, then they ask us, we send them inventories, every week, every 2 weeks, every month. They tell her, the project coordinators how many they're looking to get, for this study. And so um there there's my team probably gets, each of them from their clients probably gets 20 to 50 emails from their clients a day. And it's not even that they have a lot of clients. It's that, there's a lot of back and forth with the breeding colony. And so, and then sometimes they go, oh, I changed my mind. So they,
Yes.
there's it's just like I said, the way it's set up is so that that even if someone called me on the weekend and said, this study number is having this issue, me or a project coordinator can just be like, oh yeah, we knew about that. So like, this is what I want you to do. Because consistency, and knows that colony in and out, and you never have to worry that they don't even know what they're talking about, because
Yeah.
they're physically project managers that are in those cages and doing the things in the vivarium, including me, every day.
And one thing that you said that really struck me is the fact that, you've been on the other side. So the
Mhm.
client's thinking, you understand, their concerns, their the need to de-risk. And so the fact that you brought that knowledge and experience into Biomere so that you translated the client need. I mean, that's marvelous, because this way, I don't think there'd be many client questions that completely phase you, because you've seen them. You're like, yep, when I was a client and I was doing this, I had that same question, so I can answer it. I have a solution, set up for that particular question or that issue. So I think that's such a unique unique characteristic in Biomere, because you don't really very often see clients kind of, that crossover knowledge. It's something that, I think every CRO aspires to be able to walk in the shoes of the client. But I think, Kristin, you're unique in that you actually are an ex-client. You've walked in those shoes. I think that's something that's really important to highlight. One kind of like an offshoot of a question is, I've seen, that a lot of Vivaria, especially in CROs and commercial organizations, use software solutions, right, to manage their thing. And I think Biomere uses soft mouse. Is that right?
They
So
do,
what's
yes.
your opinion on soft mouse? Do you like it? Does it kind of help you, or does what's your has it made your team's lives easier rather?
It definitely has. So I brought that over from my old company, and actually the Biomere tech that now is a she's a project coordinator. She was my tech at the time as a client, and she had gone to a conference and saw it, and she came to me and said, "Can we please get this? This is going to make my life so much easier."
Yeah.
And at the time, I think they were just starting out. So it was like, sure, we can take the chance, right? Let's see how it is.
Yeah.
And we liked it so much that when I came over here, like I said, in 2019, a lot of it was just Excel based, and it was very
Yes.
hard to find. You'd have thousands of animals on a spreadsheet from 10 years ago. And it was kind of too burdensome. So we brought that over. And since then, I'm not going to lie, it was hard for some of the older people, not older people, but people who had been on the team for a long time, being used to the
Yeah.
Excel spreadsheets, to convert to that. But when they converted, they were like, I don't know why I was so resistant to this the entire time.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just all the time. I think because we started with them from when they were still small. We picked up like every module almost that they have, and it's just gotten
Nice.
better and better. And I still have, the two creators, I still see them at conferences, and they know my first name, and they always have
Yeah.
like a special gift for me. But
Oh,
um,
that's awesome.
it's just talking about the relationship that I've built with them, and the things that we've seen, and said it would be nice for to have this. And he's like, oh, I'll put it on my list. And eventually probably enough people say, okay, yeah, let's do this. But it's just a very easy tool, because it's we can at any time from any computer, essentially, it's all secure, but you can someone could say, did I have pups this weekend? And I can log on and see and run a report. I can run a pedigree, and then our genotyping hooks right into that automatically. So everything gets uploaded, so that we don't have to manually enter anything from one system to another, because it talks to the other system. And it's been very good for us, because it also keeps track of inventories for us.
Nice.
It helps our clients say, how many cages do we have right now? And we can tell, I just pull it up and it tells right there. So it's a really, for us, it's been a really great tool to become more efficient for our clients and to give them the information that they need pretty much like at your fingertips. It doesn't require any like number crunching or anything. You just tell it what I want it to do, and there it is. And then I can send it to them within minutes. So I think people really like that. I've had a couple of clients that actually use it inside their vivarium as well, because they're used to that. And so then when we send them things, then they can just upload it in that format.
Right.
To their
It plugs right in. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And it
So it's very nice.
yeah, and seems to me that not only is it a time saver, it's a cost saver, right? And it
Yes.
removes error, because I mean, from an academic, viewpoint, when I was in graduate school, that was a big thing. You had these massive Excel spreadsheets, and if they weren't rigorously updated pretty much on a daily or very, very frequent basis, you ended up with unscheduled breeding. You ended up with too many pups. You ended up with incorrect animals, like just so many weak points for mistakes to happen that could really, not only delay studies but increase cost, increase inefficiencies. So glad to hear, and it's really cool that because softmouse, I think, seems to be one of those programs that's taking over and really growing well. So it's really good that you brought it in early to Biomere, and the Biomere is one of the early adopters, because I do believe that's where the whole field is going to go. And you're absolutely right. Folks who've been doing this for a while, once that little change, the little pain of change, and then they can be like, oh yeah, this is
Yeah.
awesome.
And why did I do this a long time ago? I said, I can't see it because I don't know why. I mean, just the fact that you can roll up with your laptop and just with your QR scanner, just scan that cage. And there's other softwares that are out there too that, may work for people. I understand that. But like for us, like just, right there, and it prints out the new cage card. It makes the adjustments right there. No, we weren't doing, Biomere wasn't doing that 6 years ago, because
now they are,
and now they are, and it just makes everything so efficient, and that efficiency in time gets passed on to the client, or doesn't get passed on to the client, right? Because your technical hours are decreased because all of that is making everything more efficient. So it's definitely a great tool for us, and I think it's a great tool for them. Even though they don't get to use it, they reap the benefits of it. So
no, definitely. And I again, coming back to that, circling back to the idea for a biopharma client, it's all about de-risking, right? They know what's going on, they're getting the information. And, the fact that you have a dedicated project coordinator, immediately the word that popped into my head was trust. Because, clients always tend to build a trusting relationship. And I think you can probably quote like innumerable instances where the client and the project coordinator are like buddies. They're like, "Hey, how you doing?" And they form this close bond. And true sense of the word, the team at Biomere becomes an extension of the client's group, and I think that's the best form of collaboration. So I think you guys are hitting all the right points. So this is awesome. So anyway, I think we're coming up on time. So I'm gonna say thank you so much, Kristin, for sharing the information. It's so great to hear about your team and Biomere's just flexible, experienced, and just so dedicated colony management team. That always jumps out at me is the dedication is the key, because that is the root of all the advances, the continuous improvements, the adoption of technologies to improve the processes. And so with that, I will say thank you so much for speaking with me.
You're welcome.
To our viewers, I will say, if you're interested in learning more, email bd@biomere.com and check out the Biomere website, www.biomere.com. Thank you.